Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the ice. Wayne's World, Part 1, of course, brought to you by our friends at Toby Hockey. Wayne Kosior joining us a little bit. Certainly, he's not under the weather. He's a seasoned veteran when it comes to celebrating birthdays, right, Wayne?
Yeah, I've had enough of them to be a veteran at it.
There we go. We're going to just train the young son how to handle his 20th now.
Yeah, I had his 20th birthday there yesterday, so no longer a teenager. I don't know where time goes.
There we go. Let's get right into this. We got a couple of good topics this afternoon to talk about. NCAA Clearinghouse is something you and I really haven't chatted about it. What is it and why is it so important?
Well, at a high level, I mean, the NCAA Clearinghouse is really kind of a repository, an online repository where players can go in and put their information so that colleges and college coaches can go in there and validate that they meet all the requirements to play NCAA hockey in our case. And so, there's things like your transcripts from all your high school marks. You got to have the certain core requirements that are required by the NCAA, and certainly you can search those up online and make sure that you're taking the right classes. And then, of course, all your personal stats. And then maybe last but not least is your SAT score. And, with the SAT score, I know with COVID, they've kind of given a little bit of a holiday for players that you don't necessarily need that. But that holiday is going to end at some point. And so, players that might be in the 02, 03, 04, 05, and, even into the 06 now, you should be getting going on this and then making a plan to write your SAT and stuff so that you can populate this stuff.
Is it just SAT scores or is it also ACT scores? 'Cause I know some of my
Yeah.
friends, like back in the day when I was applying, 98 y'all, friend of mine and I were applying to Ivy Leagues and Div 1 schools in the States. And some of us had to write ACTs as well. Is that still a requirement with the clearinghouse?
Yeah, it's not a requirement. I mean, you do have to have one or the other. It's just that, to your point, some schools prefer the ACT, some the SAT. But again, typically the SAT is the most widely accepted from my experience. And so, bottom line is you just got to get going on it. And I tell, obviously I advise, players in both the U.S. and Canada. But here in Canada, players are a little bit more lackadaisical about that just because we're not brought up in that U.S. culture. But certainly all the U.S. kids, I mean, they know when they're hitting their junior year of school, they're working on that NCAA clearinghouse profile and stuff. And so, it's up and going by the grade 11 year. And by the time they graduate or shortly after, they've got it all set and they're ready to go. Now, we have many Canadian players, obviously, that are, a year or two out of school and still haven't written their SAT and created this profile. It's extremely important. And if you're going to play college hockey, you got to get it done.
It is certainly something to be prepared for, and as well, being prepared in the right timely fashion because you don't want to write an SAT in your senior year while it's wintertime in the middle of your last season with all the other preparations ongoing. The SATs are allowed to be written more than once, and it is a collection of your best scores. If anyone that hasn't written an SAT style exam, I remember in high school we had a PSAT, a preliminary one, just to get us an idea of what it looks like. But then writing it 2 or 3 times after the fact could be a benefit to you because it's not just a one and done. You take your best scores and you calculate them and have them in the clearinghouse so that is one hurdle you don't have to worry about when it comes to February. Teams are looking to fill spots. You're not filling that spot because you haven't checked that off the box yet. So, great in news, great idea to discuss. And obviously, having that checklist available through the NCAA Clearinghouse, you can just Google it, they'll find it. You can have that all set up. And honestly, Wayne, I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me on this. It is on the player. It is the onus of the player to get this done, or their advisor to make sure that they are on top of this, because this just shows your accountability and your responsibility towards where you want to go in the show or where you want to go progression wise in your next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good point that you made there that I want to reinforce, Theo, is that, don't leave it to the last minute. Like you say, you could be, in playoffs and wherever you're playing junior A and stuff. And then you potentially get some college interests and they say, but your clearinghouse isn't updated. You don't have an SAT in there. I mean, that would be so stressful and stuff. And so the sooner you do this and get this out of the way as a player, the better it's going to be for you.
I'll even go one further because they write them on Saturday mornings or Saturday afternoons or Sundays. Yeah. And last time I checked, junior hockey, AAA hockey happens on weekends.
Right.
And if you're stuck in a classroom from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and you got a game at 2, the last thing you're thinking about is performing well on an SAT. So take it from two people that have done this before, have a little bit of experience, Wayne and myself. Get your schedule, figure out when the SATs are being written, find a location that is close by, and write them more than once. It's okay. It's a small financial hurdle now compared to the financial extravagances that you could face or not face or have the opportunity to be taken care of through scholarship in the long run.
Absolutely. Well said, Theo.
There we go. We're one on one. Let's talk about the next version because it kind of leads to clearinghouse. It kind of leads to NCAA coaches, but junior A showcases have a lot of eyes everywhere. And just because you're performing for potentially the coaches or the organizations that you know of, there may be a couple sets of eyes that you may not know of.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. These showcases are happening, coming up, most of them kind of the end of September into October. And, most of the Canadian junior hockey leagues kind of coordinate them carefully so that, if the colleges do come up, they can kind of go from one to the other or, at least get a good fall viewing in and stuff. So, there'll be lots that I'll be attending myself. I've been talking to lots of college coaches from both Div 1 and Div 3. They're going to be at these showcases and, just can't overstate the fact that players have to make an impression at those showcases. And, I know that's a lot of pressure, but, ultimately that's what comes to being a good player and succeeding at a high level. You got to be able to handle that pressure, turn that pressure and the anxiety and all that stuff that it creates in your body and turn it into, positive actions. And not everybody can do that, but, that's what you need to do because, frankly, these college coaches can't get up to Canada a lot. So when they do get up, and then maybe, once for these fall showcases, then a lot of leagues will have like a mid-season or early winter showcase again that they might be at. But if you don't catch their attention, I mean, you probably missed that year of opportunity. And now, again, your advisor, people like myself, can get players on the radar. Certainly, we're talking with these coaches about our list, but at the end of the day, they would have our list of players. And if they go to that showcase and that player doesn't stand out for them, player, hypothetically gets scratched off that list and they won't watch them. Whereas if you catch their attention, then they're going to do some more homework. They're going to keep watching video on you and stuff. So it's a very, very critical, point in time, I guess, for players looking to go NCAA is these upcoming showcases. So make sure and prepare well for them.
Prepare for them well is what leads into my quick comment about it and the adversity you face in the showcase compared to regular league play. A lot of these showcases might be cross league, they might be within the league, but we've always seen Manitoba MJ and the SJ do this. The SI is actually getting involved early in September with their preseason tour. Their teams are going through Western fronts just to see how their caliber of hockey and team compared to other junior programs in Canada. So further to that point, if a scout is seeing how you're playing outside of your conference per se, that leads to how you can handle travel, adversity of playing different teams when you go play in the NCAA. Because granted, a majority of your games are within conference, but you're playing, if you're on the East Coast, you're still playing the Denvers, you're still playing the St. Cloud States, you're playing down in ASU, and you're going to be playing areas of geographical difference. So that also adds a little adversity to your competition. And I've always used the phrase, diamonds are created with large amounts of pressure on them. So
Yeah.
let's be diamonds here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And a couple other points just to add on to it. And I mean, we've always talked, you and I, about the intangibles that you got to show when you go to tryouts and to these showcases. Well, college coaches are no different. They want to see effort. They want to see character in players. They want to see good teammanship. They want to see positive body language. So you can't have negative body language. Like, seriously, if you do something that you throw your hands up in the air because somebody gives you a bad pass or whatever, you're probably going to get scratched off the list on that fact alone. And I'm 100% serious on that. That's one thing that's just an absolute no-no to coaches at all levels. And then, of course, college hockey, it's a fast skating north-south game, even much more so than, say, junior A in Canada or the Western Hockey League. So, number one, they're going to look for your skating and speed. So you got to show that. If you don't, it's going to be, not a necessarily disqualify you, but it's going to be a red mark on you, a flag. Guy can't skate, not enough speed type thing. core skills and abilities as a forward type thing. Defensemen, they want to see some defensive play. Do you have a little bit of offensive side to your game? Goalies, you got to see, can they make the big save? How do they work under pressure? How do they handle the puck? How do they communicate to the players in front of themselves? All those things that you got to show. And the vast majority of those are 100% within the player's control. And so you just got to make sure and show them and exhibit them. So again, a little bit more just about preparation going into these showcases, right? You can't have a million things on your mind. You got to get focused in on your performance, what you're going to do. Turn that phone off, at least a few hours before you go to the game, to the rink and stuff, and focus on what needs to be done.
Align yourself with the good things you do on the ice and perform greatness out there to make sure that your best skate is forward. Certainly good words to live by, Wayne. Topic 3 today leads to some of the guys that maybe have done, a little more seasoned. They've got the development. They've gone through a development camp. They've gone through an ID camp. From a player's perspective, however, these Western Hockey League main camps, do they look different now after COVID, or is it still the same? What's going on and the same parameters are in place? Not from a COVID perspective, but from a hockey perspective. What are they looking for these players, and what do players have to do to make sure that they are, they're making the grade and they're catching the eye and potentially making that Western Hockey League team for the first time?
Yeah. So first of all, as far as the format, I think this is going to be the first year post-COVID that you're really going to see camps that resemble the camps that were pre-COVID. So, most camps you're going to see 60, 80, maybe upwards of 100 players kind of trying out. Most of those players are going to be obviously the 50 players on their protected list, and some free agents they're bringing to camp. And those free agents may be some of the younger kids, such as this year was the 07 draft year. So some of those kids are getting their first look at the WHL level of play. And there's some junior A players that teams are looking to plug a few holes and stuff like that. So there could be some 17, 18, 19-year-old junior A players that'll be at these camps looking to take a crack at the WHL if they're not going to go the college route. And so that's it from the format. It's going to be a lot similar. Typically what they're going to have is maybe a couple of skill sessions and skates, and then it really goes to scrimmages. And eventually throughout the weekend, they'll narrow it down to, 2 all-star teams and play an inter-squad, and the decisions are made from there. Now, as far as things that you need to exhibit at these camps, a lot of what we just talked about, in these junior A showcases is, again, the intangibles, the things that you have 100% control of, you got to show, such as the positive body language, your effort, your teammanship and stuff like that. And again, you got to show why you're special, right? Every player's different in some way, I guess. So, you can't go out and try and pretend you're Connor McDavid if you're kind of a role player type player, right? And I think sometimes players make that mistake that they're trying to be something that they're not. And typically that's not going to turn out well for you because that's not who you are. So you just got to show whatever special skills and abilities you have and hope that team needs that skill and ability, and that you catch the coaches and the GM's eye.
Yeah, the gone are the days of showing up to any hockey camp, whether it be Western Hockey League, Junior, AAA, whatever, and saying, "Oh, I'm just going to get in shape at camp."
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen anymore, and it doesn't happen because time is precious. When you said this is the first set of camps post COVID, hopefully without any more restrictions, and we hope we don't have to see them for any time, never again. The importance of seeing a player ready to go from skate one is imperative for their own benefits, and what they do and how they perform. Like you said, they got to be special. They got to do what they do well. They got to be the best of what they do best, and they have to catch the eye. And like you said, when you get 1 or 2 skates in, they're making cuts already. Like you said, they're getting down to the top 45 guys, 50 guys they want to keep around. They don't have time.
Yeah.
They want to make decisions because they got to start putting chemistry and gel on this team to make sure it's got a good run moving forward. So excellent words, Wades. I really appreciate it. Good luck this rest of the week. I don't know what you got scheduled travel-wise or anything going on. I know we got World Juniors, but maybe we'll watch the quarters and whatnot, and we'll talk about that. But we also want to talk about, I think next week, I'm going to preface this one because next Tuesday, you and I are going to join, hopefully, and talk about the importance of being a protected player and unlisted player and get some of those definitions out there and what that means. Because when you do go to some of these camps and you see the protected list and you're not one of those players, what really happens? So maybe that's something you and I can chat with next week.
For sure. That'd be a great topic, and I look forward to chatting with you next week on that deal.
Wayne Kosior with me here on Wayne's World of On the Ice. Stay with us. We'll be back with part 2. I promised Gordie Tumilson we talk about goaltending, and he's an older goaltender, but nonetheless, slap shots in town tonight. Ogie Oglethorpe and the boys in the Hansons are in Winnipeg. We'll chat with him here after the break on the ice.
Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. Your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.
Got Gordie Tumilson back here, part 2 of On the Ice. Gordie, how you doing today? I like the jersey in the background.
Oh, so I'm super. Had a little golf this morning, so that was great. And looking forward to talking to you again. And that's our Winnipeg Jets alumni uniform, NHL WHA. And we wear those proudly, or the guys who can still skate wear those proudly when we play exhibition charity games, et cetera, here in Manitoba.
Fabulous, Gordie. Busy weekend for you, I'm sure. Now, last week we chatted a little bit about what's going on with Pilot Mountain. We got the updates, of course, which was great, but we forgot to mention something that was on your personal agenda as well in terms of goalie training and working with netminders. I'll leave that with you, and you can take the floor, Gordie, and tell me how the evolution of goal training has occurred through your eyes and what you do to help these goalies on and off the ice.
Thanks, Theo. Yeah, good memory remembering that we talked about this, and then we didn't talk about it, so that's good. This is all my opinions, of course, and I formed those opinions from being around for a billion years, and so I really like what's gone on in hockey in terms of the kind of training that's gone on. I mean, we've got goalie kids really get, for the most part, the kids that can afford it and are close enough to it, that are not remote, of course, and have somebody in their community or in their area able to kind of perform the training duties, because they're certainly far more wide-ranging than what we ever had. Well, first of all, we never had any coaching back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It started to happen in the 70s a little bit because guys like me and others, once we retired 70s and 80s, we started to help out, do hockey schools and camps and whatnot, and goalie training became important or more important. And then as the 90s kicked in and the theorists got a hold of it, the Ian Clarks and the guys like that got a hold of this and said, you know what, we're giving up too many soft goals. We give up too many on the ice goals. We give up too many cheap goals, 5-hole goals, through the body goals. We can do better. And so that whole thing changed. The dynamic of playing goal changed. And of course, it helped that the goalies had better equipment. Kevlar became a really important part of this. They couldn't have done what they're doing now with the equipment that we wore. So there was a big change there. Masks and shoulder pads and belly pads and all the other equipment changed. So that was a good thing. And so all of these things evolved. And now we have kids that, of course, they do really, really nice stuff in the net. Not as many what we would call cheap or bad goals and whatnot. So that's evolved nicely. And there's tremendous drills now, and the kids move around the ice. They slide around the ice like they're like tadpoles in the water. They zoom around. I'm in awe of the kids. I mean, I really am. And anybody who watched the NHL guys, the power, and we have to remember, bigger, stronger guys have more power, and the little kids that are playing goal, that they've learned this stuff. So mums and dads and coaches, little kid can't go across the top of the crease or the goalpost to post if he's 10 years old and has not a lot of muscle power, but he's going to get there. The techniques are great. They work on them, and they're wonderful. So that's all in place, and I really love that. But what's not in place is the sort of the mental coaching, the emotional coaching, the be prepared for the thing out of left field coaching, because the shoe's going to drop and all of a sudden something different is going to happen. And how do you handle that? You get pulled in the first 5 minutes of a game. Does anybody ever talk about that to a goalie before it happens? Probably not, or not very many. So I deal with that. I try and deal with all of those things that surround the goalie. The technical stuff, I've not, I certainly have never done those things personally, and I'm not an expert. I know how to do them, and I can walk kids through them, and I know what's right and wrong. But it's not my place to be a superstar coach in that area. We have others to do that. And by the way, Pilot Mountain has Brian Archibald coming from Killarney, Manitoba, to do this, and he's in his mid-20s, and he's a great coach and a great ex-goalie guy for the Southwest Cougars, et cetera, and junior hockey. Anyway, so there's this whole mental part and preparation part, and that really doesn't get looked at. And if we hadn't had that in place last year at Pilot Mountain with the subpar teams that we had, our 7 goalies would have just melted. They were in trouble going into November. But we managed to shore them up with not worrying about winning and losing, because winning and losing seems to be the big issue. Well, when you're not winning, my God, what happens to you? Well, you fall apart. We watch NHL guys fall apart. We watch pro guys in every sport fall apart. That shouldn't happen. And we worked through all of those things, and all of our goalies seem to come out. Remember, we are crazy going in anyway. But we seem to come out of the trauma of not winning in the first half of the season pretty well. And so we were able to kind of keep our goalies buoyed for their emotions and their eagerness to play. Even though they know they're probably not going to win this game, they're going to go out and make every save they can. And lo and behold, we had really good end of the season performances by most of our goalies. And we had Kean Hodgins, we've talked about him before, who's signed as a 16-year-old with Adirondack Junior Thunder in Adirondack, New York, in junior hockey. So we had some success last year on that side of things because we addressed all that emotional stuff. The other part of this is the review of video and game follow-up. So, in my position last year, I followed up every game that the kids played in. There was more than 100, so I watched every game. And then I send a text. Usually I have something positive to start the text off, because that's a neat thing. Saying something positive to a kid that just got beat 10-1 and made 70 saves is a pretty good deal. You survived. So we did that. And so we had that little bit of rapport going back and forth. And most of the times the goalies would respond quickly. And then we have our regular Tuesday meeting and be able to talk about those things at Pilot Mountain when we met. So looking at videos, responding to games, watching the games for the kids. I don't think many coaches today do that. I think there's more work on the technical side, which you got to have. Everybody's got to have the technical side. If you can't do that, you can't play goal. But not enough time spent on the video side. Not enough time spent on getting it right. Like, goalies blame themselves for every goal against a lot of times. Well, no, it's not true. You might have given up 1 or 2 or 3 questionable goals, yes, and we don't want those. But the backdoor goals all night long are not your responsibility. I'm sorry, you can't be there, and you're not going to be there because you're going to leave your spot too soon. The guy's going to shoot it in the net. So they get that whole thing going on. And then there's the last thing I wanted to touch on is that I'm going back to the change of how we play goal, sliding and being down in the butterfly more than standing up almost, is that the coaches will ask me, well, they get beat over the shoulder all the time. No, yeah. 20 feet out, guy rips it, bang off the crossbar, goes in. Yeah. Okay, so you got a 5'10" goalie, goes down on his knees. The little girl goalies are 5'6", 5'7". You get the NHL guys who are 6'5". There's still a space, and lo and behold, the good shooters hit those spaces sometimes, not very often, percentage-wise, not very often, but certainly they get them in there, and it's always disappointing. But I ask the coaches when they say to me, well, they get over the shoulder, and there are times when they shouldn't be scored on over the shoulder, but I'll get to those later. Over the shoulder. I say, okay, you got a choice, coach. Where do you want the goalie to be scored on? And that's a tough question for the goalie. Never is a good answer, but that's not going to happen. The net's too big, the puck's too small, it goes too fast. Passes go across, east-west and blah, blah, blah. So I say to them, do you want them to go through the body? Do you want them to go in the 5-hole underneath the pads? Or do you want them going, make the shooter put it bar down, bar in, posts in? Make the shooter be a good shooter, not a lucky shooter, not a bad goalie guy shooter, So they all look at me after that and go, okay, you're right. They can't be everywhere. We can't be fast enough to save everything because guys can really rip them. And so we come to a realization that there are places guys are going to score goals. And we make them score them in the right spots, and we try to reflex those plays. So that kind of quickly summarizes, how I view goalies today and view the position and view where my expertise fits best for the goalies that come to us, because they're all kind of on track with the good technical work. They understand this stuff. We get a little bit better. They're going to get better under Brian, no doubt about that in my mind. With the amount of ice time they get and his coaching, I feel like I'm able to kind of help buoy the kids up and move them along, depending on where the emotions are, where the mental part of the game is, where that preparation comes in. So they're not fooled. There's left field doesn't get them. The shoe doesn't drop from someplace that they're not going to be prepared for. And so that's kind of where Pilot Mound is at with me involved. And so that's the other side of goaltending. It
certainly is more involved, Gordie, than just getting between the pipes, stopping pucks. And like you said, during a game, you get that odd pull, or you get that conversation with the goalie coach after the fact. There is a lot more going on. I mean, Wayne and I talk about tangibles and intangibles that a netminder can handle, and especially with today's game, going back to your days before my time, even my time, game was all about physical prowess. The emotional part of the game, the culture hadn't changed, and now we're looking at players and advisors working from the emotional and mental standpoint as well, because regardless of age, there is that part of the game that has not been worked on for decades. Now, that's part of working on your craft. That's part of working on to make sure that you are prepared physically, mentally, and emotionally. How do goalies concentrate so that they're not working too long, they're not working too hard, but they're working smarter towards their craft? Because you can throw a shotgun at a goaltender with all the approaches of what to do and what not to do, but how much of it is really absorbed by a netminder, especially because they are a bit of a taboo netminder, goaltender kind of thing. They don't get talked to very often on the bench or with their players. You talk to Kieran, talk to a bunch of goaltenders prior to, and they are kind of on their own island. They do their own thing. They set up their own way. They get in their game, focus a certain way. But how do you, Gordie, assess the importance of wrangling what is important and getting them to perform their best they can during practice and game time so that it's not overwhelming?
Well, it's a process. And I think everybody in the game, everybody in sport knows that getting from a little kid to a big adult and being a pro or whatever you're going to end up being is a process. And folks forget that. And the process, unfortunately, doesn't, in most cases for goalie kids coming up, boys and girls, doesn't get the emotional and mental part of it, doesn't get handled very well early on and through. And then, of course, the world's become a hateful place based on a lot of stuff that we see and hear today. And there's a lot more pressure on the kids and the parents, and that's the kids again, to not make a mistake, because no matter what happens, the goalkeeper's the last line of defense, and we've heard this a million times. Last line of defense, and if it goes in, it's not your fault necessarily, but you feel bad. My gosh, every goalie feels bad being scored on, whether it's their fault or not, whether they had a hope in hell or not. So, it's a process of understanding that winning and losing isn't the important thing. I'll try that one at the beginning of the season and then get to it at the end. And yes, it is important, by the way. I love winning. I just like losing an awful lot, but it's not the most important thing. It's the individual person's growth as a player and as a person. And that's really important. So I start on day one. In fact, I've already started. I've been sending emails with little sayings and fun stuff that team is important. It's not I, me, it's us, we, that kind of stuff. Those are things that goalies understand because it's about team. They understand that. They need the teammates to be good too, because they can't be good if they can be pretty darn good, but they can't win if the teammates don't show up. So, we start that early on and we work through that, and we're positive. We're very positive, but we deal with the negative. We deal with the disappointment, but we always try to be glass half full. That kind of a thing. So that's who I am. That's the way I coach. It's been a pretty good deal, I think, for me and most of the goalies that we've had at Pilot Mound. I think they've all come away with a different outlook on what's important to families and goalies and winning and losing in teams and all that stuff. And hopefully their careers move forward the way they want them we've been a kind of a part of that for them.
Gordie, last question before I let you go on this matter, because it's something I've wanted to ask you for several months now, and I think this is the right time to do it. We have to be sensitive towards our words, our vocabulary used towards players of all sports, and the sensitivity emotionally, mentally, it all connects now. At the same time, though, how do you explain to a young person that's in a sport that there is an accountability factor and it needs to come across in a certain way, and the old school way of yelling and pointing and directing isn't the way it works now? Gordie, I'll give you the floor for the next minute. What, in your word, and quickly, is the best way to help a netminder or a young player going through some adversity and making sure that they're, like you said, is that positive versus always focusing on the negative?
Seriously, positively, polite, but serious, and then fun. Fit all that into some kind of a conversation. And that's why I always start off with a positive, and then we can get to the negative. I apologize. I'll give a swear word and I'll say, oops, maybe I shouldn't have sworn. And I smile and go, and I won't do it. Then I swear again. And then they look at me and they know I don't mean to swear. And it's kind of, we make fun of it. I have never hollered at a goalie in the billion years that I've been coaching. I've never had to. I just look at them. They know they've made a mistake or they know they've done something wrong. We talk about it, and I'm very serious about getting it right, but never hollering. Don't need to do that. In a recent article that's going to come out in Game On magazine pretty soon, I'm more of a friend and a grandpa than I am a coach, but they still got to know there's a line, and that's what it is. And you know what? Goalie kids are great. They're all pretty smart, and they all know what's going on. They've been through the ringer already at 14, 15, 16. So, it moves along pretty easily, and they know that I care about them and they care about what they do. So it all seems to work out.
Building that relationship with your goaltenders is utmost importance. Gordie Tumilson has shown that with his academy and with working with the netminders, especially how hard he has this year. Looking forward to seeing how you and Mr. Archibald work together hand in hand and seeing how the netminders appreciate your fine work this upcoming season. Gordie, any last words before I let you go?
Oh, Brian and I are going to make us unstoppable, or we're going to be totally stoppable, whatever that means. Yeah, no, we're very excited about the season. We've got 6 new goalies in house, and so that's going to be fun working with those new people, and then bringing our 2 guys that are coming back. So yeah, going to be a fun season.
Gordie, looking forward to catching up with you as the season progresses.
Thanks, Theo.
Okay, we'll keep working on that golf swing. There we have it. Tonight's episode of On the Ice, brought to you by Dokespoke Fuels, Case Financial Group, Toby Hockey, and of course Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. I'd like to thank our guests Wayne Kosior and Gordie Tumilson for joining us today. We'll be back on Thursday with GM and Director of Player Personnel, Player Development, Mr. Kevin McCallum of the Cam River Fighting Walleye. Truly an amazing preseason setup for those young boys. Starting early September, we'll get into those details on Thursday's episode. Thanks for watching, bringing more goodness to the greatness here on ASTV. As always, appreciate you watching. Enjoy the rest of the great week, and we'll see you on Thursday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye for now.